It was an autumn night, where darkness lingered over the cemetery of the small town of Ravenwood. The winds howled among the old trees, creating a frightening atmosphere that sent shivers down even the bravest souls. Few dared to venture there at night, but there were those who dared to defy fear and explore the boundaries of the unknown. A group of friends, eager for thrills, decided to pay a visit to the cemetery, feeding on the urban legends that surrounded the place. Ignoring the warnings of the most superstitious, they entered through the rusty gates, guided only by the faint light of their lanterns. Among old tombstones and moss-covered mausoleums, the feeling of being watched was constant. Footsteps echoed in the distance, shadows moved among the graves, but nothing would prepare them for the terror that awaited. As they reached the center of the cemetery, a dense fog began to form around them, as if the very air was alive. The air became heavy, hard to breathe, and a chill ran down their spines as they heard a macabre whisper echoing through the tombs. Suddenly, the tombstones began to tremble, as if the imprisoned souls were clamoring for freedom. A malevolent force took hold of the place, transforming the landscape into a scene worthy of nightmares. Graves opened up, revealing twisted skeletons and decomposing corpses. The group desperately tried to flee, but their legs seemed petrified by fear. Shadows writhed around them, whispering ancient words and promises of death. Every step they took led them deeper into the darkness, closer to the abyss of the unknown. And then, amidst the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows. A specter dressed in tattered clothes with lifeless eyes. It was the manifestation of death itself, calling for their lost souls. Panic gripped the group as they fought to escape the clutches of the unknown. But the haunted cemetery had other plans for them, plans that involved blood and sacrifice. The night continued to spread its black mantle over Ravenwood Cemetery, and screams echoed in the darkness, marking once again the presence of the terror that dwelled in that dark and macabre place. The shadows writhed around the group as they struggled in vain against the supernatural force that held them in the haunted cemetery. Every step they attempted towards freedom was blocked by a new manifestation of the terror that inhabited that accursed place. The graves trembled, skeletons rose from the tombs, and the moans of the dead echoed among the tombstones. It was as if the cemetery itself was rebelling against the intrusive presence of the living. The shadowy figure of death advanced relentlessly towards the group, its presence saturated with ancestral terror that paralyzed them. Its empty eyes gleamed with a sinister light as it extended its skeletal hand towards the defenseless victims. Desperate, the friends found themselves cornered in a dead end, surrounded from all directions by supernatural entities thirsting for their souls. Every breath was a sigh of pure horror. Every heartbeat echoed like a mournful drum announcing their inevitable ruin. And then, at the height of despair, a voice echoed in the darkness, cutting through the sepulchral silence like a sharp blade. It was an ancient voice, laden with wisdom and power, a voice that seemed to defy hell itself. The friends turned towards the voice, finding a solitary figure emerging from the shadows. It was an old sage, dressed in a white linen cloak and holding an ornate staff. His eyes gleamed with a divine light, defying the darkness that surrounded the cemetery. With a firm gesture, the old sage began to chant ancient words of power, invoking an ancestral magic that had been forgotten by time. The surrounding air began to vibrate with a primordial energy, repelling the forces of darkness that sought to dominate them. The shadows retreated before the light, the specters vanished into the depths of the cemetery, and the shadowy figure of death dissolved into black smoke. The haunted cemetery regained its sinister quietude, as if nothing had happened. The friends looked around, stunned and speechless at what had just occurred. The old sage gazed at them serenely before disappearing into the shadows like a fleeting mirage. But despite the apparent calm, the dark secrets of the haunted cemetery still remained hidden in the depths of the night, patiently awaiting their next opportunity to emerge and claim their victims. As friends recovered from the terror they had just faced, a lingering sense of unease hung in the air. They knew they were not safe, even though for now, the malevolent forces seemed to have retreated. They decided to leave the cemetery, their minds tormented by the supernatural experience they had just endured. Every shadow, every noise, made them shudder, fearing that the nightmare could return at any moment. As they reached the rusty gates of the cemetery, they were greeted by a cold breeze whispering through the trees. They glanced back one last time, observing the silent tombstones and the dark mausoleums rising like macabre sentinels in the darkness. But even as they left the haunted cemetery behind, they knew that the night still held dark secrets. The evil that inhabited that place would not be easily forgotten, and the price for defying the supernatural forces could be higher than they could ever imagine. As they walked through the empty streets of Ravenwood, a sense of paranoia consumed them. Every shadow seemed to contort. Every breath was a reminder of the terror they had faced. They knew they would never be the same after that fateful night in the haunted cemetery. But even in the face of the horror they had witnessed, one question persisted in their tormented minds. What else awaited in the shadows of the night, beyond the macabre visions and the supernatural creatures that inhabited the haunted cemetery? As the friends advanced through the shadowy streets of Ravenwood, the feeling of being watched never left them. Every corner, every shadow, seemed to hide dark secrets, feeding the fear that now consumed them. Finally, they reached their homes, but even the comfort of their abodes couldn't dispel the horror that haunted them. They knew that the night brought unfathomable mysteries, and that the haunted cemetery was just the beginning of a journey into the unknown. As they lay in their beds, trying in vain to find peace and sleep, one certainty assaulted them. Evil never rested, and the haunted cemetery would continue to claim its victims, one by one, until all succumbed to its relentless darkness. Thus, as the city of Ravenwood plunged into the night's darkness, the friends remained vigilant, aware that horror was always lurking, ready to emerge from the shadows and consume their defenseless souls. And so, the haunted cemetery remained, a macabre symbol of the terror awaiting those who dared to defy the secrets of the beyond.